The December regular school board meeting, School District Board of Directors to order. Ed, would you take a roll call?
Anderson? Yes. Wiley? Yes. Andrew? Here. Amos? Yes. Lloyd?
Here.
Ron? Here.
You have the agenda before you. Are there any additions or deletions there too?
No changes to the agenda.
Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So, okay, second.
Ed?
Anderson? Yes. Wiley?
Yes.
Andrew? Yes. Amos? Yes. Lloyd?
Yay.
Ron?
Yeah.
Item 4, citizens' comments. Ronnie Ashton has requested to speak before the board. Ronnie, we have a microphone up here, or do you want to just...
I'm pretty out. Can I just sit and talk?
You can.
Basically, I talked.
But before you start, I just want to thank you and compliment you on your dedication to youth basketball. It certainly shows up in the product we're putting on the field or court for varsity. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, you may proceed.
Hey, Ronnie, can you just give a little background of your, and what you do?
I'm Ronnie Ashton. I am a probation parole officer down in Burlington now. I've been working with sex offenders for about 22 years. I started at prison. I was a counselor there. Here at the prison, and for the last 2 years I've been working in Burlington as a probation parole officer. So the reason why I'm here and my coworkers are here, I talked to Mr. Hendrickson about the rules on sex offenders being allowed to participate in their maybe kids' events, programs, graduations, and things like that. And we kind of thought it'd be a good idea for us to come and talk. We're definitely not advocating here for sex offenders, so don't get the wrong idea here. But there are a lot of, we just don't think it should be a no sex offenders allowed period on school grounds and things like that, because everybody's case is different. So we would ask that the school board look at each case individual instead of grouping everybody together. So that's basically kind of why we're here to sit in on the meeting and see what's going to transpire, I guess, with the rules as far as sex offenders being allowed to attend schools, programs, and things like that.
Do you ladies have any comments you wish to make?
I guess we'll introduce yourselves.
I'm Katie Hummer.
You might speak up.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm Katie Hummer, and I have only been working in this position since May, but I still am willing to answer any questions if anyone wants to know anything, and obviously each case we look at individually, so if you have questions about someone coming to the school, you can always ask us what we thought they're doing with supervision.
So you would be a resource for us if we have a request?
Yes.
I'll introduce myself. Lynn Marquardt. I've been with the district for about 3 years. I also work with the sex offender unit. All three of us facilitate groups, and we have a group member that would like to look into picking up his kids and possibly coming to their events. I believe it needs to be case by case. We obviously cannot advocate for those that are not currently on supervision, but we would like to at least, I guess, pick your brains regarding those that we do have in group and that are currently on supervision at the moment.
Board have any questions of these three?
So when you, Ron, as you say, case by case, so, we're looking at Iowa code, we're looking at those things, but so we're looking at it black and white on that paper. So can you give us an idea of what the differences could be between one sex offender and another sex offender, so that we can get a general idea of what you're talking about on that side?
Sure. So we have two gentlemen that have kids at Allen, and this is how this all kind of got started. One of the kids was 19 when he was in a relationship with a 14-year-old, and it was approved by the parents at first for her to be together. After he broke up with her, the parents turned him in. So now he's a registered sex offender for life. And by whatever rules here right now, he can't come to the school, his kids' school programs, or pick them up, or do anything like that. The other gentleman that we have is a sex offender, and he abused an adult. I won't say who, of course. But, so he has went to prison to this time, was on supervision with us, has completed, well, he's not completed treatment, but he's doing very well in treatment. He does have, he's actually living back with his family and his kids, but he can't come to the school to pick them up. He can't go to their programs. When they graduate, he won't be able to go to their graduations, things like that. So they are wanting us to come and kind of voice our opinions about those things. Now, we will certainly never, ever, ever suggest anybody that we feel is unsafe, to come to the schools, to be around the schools, to pick their kids up. But someone who, like in those situations that have proved to us that they can be trustworthy. And another thing, we would never allow them just to come by themselves. They would always have to have an adult chaperone or support system, is what we call, with them when they would come anywhere near the schools. So I know Burlington allows it. Washington, right now, I have 2 guys, they allow it. So, I mean, that's just some of the surrounding communities that I contact to see what was going on. And I have some guys that are in those school districts that are allowed to pick up their kids. The main thing with our guys is they want to be able to pick up their kids, so their girlfriend or wife doesn't have, that burden's not on them, every day. So, that allows it.
In the policy that we're considering, yes, it's in the language. Just pick up. Yeah, yes. Whatever time it takes to pick your child up, yes, that is part of the policy.
Ronnie, out of those on the registry, say in Henry County, what percentage of those on the registry are supervised?
Everyone that's on the registry is supervised unless they have completed their supervision. So there are guys that have discharge, and if they're not on supervision, we wouldn't be advocating for them. So they would be on their own.
What do you think the percentage is?
Henry County, I would say 70% are
Or
supervised.
70% are, so 7 out of 10
Yeah.
are supervised.
And out of that percentage, I would say maybe 10% would want to have kids and would want to come to the schools and pick up their kids. Like I said, we only have 2. And I supervise 45, they supervise about 30 to 40. So out of that 120, 130, there's 2 guys we're asking right now.
So out of that, say you got 30% that aren't supervised, who looks over them?
They are in the section of registry. All they have to do is register. There's no.
So nobody supervises them, nobody,
And once in a while, they have the sheriff's departments, they do their yearly checks or whatever, but other than that, they're not supervised.
Now, John, am I correct that at the policy committee meeting, Louis Roselle visited, and he said that he would be willing also to work with our school district, and that any of, I think there are only 14 registered sex offenders right now in our district, he would vet whoever was making a request and give his opinion as to whether or not it was a reasonable request. And also our attorney would look into the circumstances of whatever the court situation had been. And then it would be on strictly a case-by-case basis. That doesn't mean like, it's been decided you can pick up your kids, but that doesn't mean that you can also come to a music program. That's a separate case. You have to ask about that. And you would have school personnel as your escort the entire time you're on the grounds. Or if you wanted to come to a graduation, again, that's a separate event. Ask permission, get written permission from the administration, and then the administration would provide you with an escort. And that's the way Louis, if I'm remembering.
Correct.
So it's a pretty close rein on people.
It's very close.
Any further questions or comments from the board?
I would just comment, Dave, of the most recent registry that we received from Henry County, there were 25 individuals registered, and 5 of those individuals have either children or grandchildren in our school district.
Does the rest of the board get the sex offender registry every month by email? Anything further?
And I was not aware, believe it or not, I don't sit and read the Iowa Code for crazy kickers, but there, it's written right in there, the option for a elementary or secondary school to provide written permission by the school administrator or the school's designee. I didn't know that was in there. I thought this was us inventing something, and it's not.
No, I think that's why we've been told we need the policy, because it's provided by the state code. Anything further, board? John? Thank you all for coming. We will address this issue later in our agenda. Welcome to stay. We'll go on to item 5, approval of minutes, claims, and financials. As passed, as far as the financials go, we will pull out for separate action the payment of the rent and the reimbursement for utilities to our board member, Carl Braun. Does the board have any comments or questions about any of those items? John, is there anything on the claims and financials you want to point out to us?
There's just a few things that you might not see every month. There was a bill from Indian Hills. We have 2 students, special needs students, that are attending Indian Hills as part of their individualized education plan. That was a bill for just over $10,000. One that you don't see every month is tuition to SCC. Our students who take online courses or are taking concurrent enrollment classes pay some tuition. The district pays some tuition. That was just about $26,000. Another thing that I would point out, and if you haven't been to the weight room to see some of the new equipment in the weight room, that bill was on there just short of $20,000. It's fantastic equipment. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention was we did get Mark got our water heaters in for our locker rooms. Taft helped with the design and the equipment on that. That was just over $10,000. So those are some that you don't see every month.
Board have any specific questions about this? All right, then could I, have a motion to approve the minutes, claims, and financials with the exception of the rent to Mr. Braun and the reimbursement of utilities to Mr. Braun.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further questions or comments? Not Ed?
Anderson?
Yes.
Wiley?
Yes?
Andrew?
Yes.
Amos? Yes. Boyd?
Yay.
Ron?
Yeah.
Then could I have a motion to approve the payment of rent to Mr. Braun and reimbursement of the utilities?
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion or questions? Not Ed?
Anderson?
Yes.
Wiley?
Yes?
Andrew?
Yes.
Amos? Yes. Boyd?
Yay.
Ron?
Move on to item 6, reports. First one is instructional services, an update on our teacher leadership program, instructional coaches, and Katie Gavin, Director of Instruction. So Katie, are you shepherding us through this?
No, I just get to say hi. So for those of you new on the board, we are very fortunate to have been one of the first districts in the state, one of the first 33 districts in the state to receive the Teacher Leadership and Compensation Grant. And while it's called a grant, it's an ongoing funding source that has moved around our professional development and really motivated and taken teacher leadership to another level. Previous to this, our state had just a couple of options for teachers to grow professionally, one of them being principalship, curriculum director, superintendency type of options. With the teacher leadership and compensation program, it's developed another track for teachers to grow and develop. But the bigger impact is that it allows us to build capacity amongst all our teachers to be the best classroom teacher that they possibly can be. So with that, I'm going to let the rest of the coaches, our instructional coaches, we have 6 of them, give their perspective on the work that they do. In the past, we've talked about the data from them, we've talked about their roles and responsibilities, so tonight they're really going to talk to you about what their work actually looks like.
I'm Sean Striegel. I'm an elementary instructional coach. As Lisa is passing out those items, those of you that were here last year would recognize them as the roles and responsibilities of an instructional coach. And if you're new to the board, we're handing those things out so you can kind of read through them at your leisure and kind of see what we're doing. But what we wanted to do was make a connection. And that connection really is to a mission statement that we wrote along with Katie's help last spring that you see on the board that we're sharing with you. And that mission statement in our minds and hearts, it really connects back to the role of an instructional coach. And that is a very wide, very broad statement. And so each one of us are going to share with you in maybe one way that we feel that we're meeting some of those roles and connecting to our mission statement. The one that I want to talk about is the PLCs, or Professional Learning Communities. It's an initiative that as coaches we can support, and one of the things that we've done is in October we went to a 3-day seminar or a training on that, and it was an amazing experience because we got to listen to some of the top minds in the nation and get some great feedback on some of the things that we're doing already, and then getting new ideas to bring those things back. So as instructional coaches, we're supporting those teams, those learning teams that we have in our district. Currently, I myself am working with it every time we have an opportunity to meet with that learning community, those PLCs. I'm working hand in hand, not just as a think partner in that situation, but even bringing in some of the data, some of the information that we know helps to run an efficient team, and allowing that collaboration to take place. And that is one of the items, and I'll let the others share theirs.
Hello, Dave Watts. I'm a secondary instructional coach, and a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to share, just as an example, is about the Open Up Resources Collaboration Day that we had last Wednesday. And our middle school math department is starting a new curriculum from a company called Illustrative Mathematics. And the company provides great training on each of the units and all of that stuff. But as they started talking to each other and to other districts and said, we just want to talk to each other, where are you at? So Brittany Roberts and I started taking our time and putting together a day that we could bring different schools together to do just that, talk about it. What's it look like in your room? What's it look like in my room? And be able to just visit about that. And that collaboration was a very good thing. And we had 10 schools represented, different schools from around the area, 36 people. And the feedback that we got from the forms that we asked, the questions that we asked, they had appreciated it and saw a lot of value in it. So that's one of the things that we did. Another thing was how the high school math department has started a self-paced program in Algebra 2. And so we started just by visiting and talking about changes we might want to make, and did some testing. And then as that testing went on in a section or two of class, the interest started to grow. And then at the end of the year, after a survey with the kids, Todd and the Algebra 2 teachers said, let's try this. We have enough interest. Let's try this for 2 units this year, and let's see what they think. And then after Unit 2, then they can decide to go back to the traditional teaching method or stay with the self-paced teaching method. And out of about 170 students, 95%, when given the choice, said, we want to continue with the self-paced. And wow, that's great. So what we wanted to do, if we have that kind of interest, we said, okay, what kind of gaps? It looks like students are enjoying this. But so we took a trip to Grundy Center, a teacher that we heard speak at a conference about self-paced. And so we got to visit with them, check what we're doing. They're going to be coming down in February to kind of look over the classes and help us to identify any gaps and that kind of thing. So that's a couple of examples. I'll let the rest share. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Seifert. I'm the elementary math instructional coach. Some of my work this year has been involving teachers who are interested in incorporating centers into their math time. So this work has stemmed from the teachers coming to me and asking if we could find a way to help get more hands-on activities in their classrooms or challenge those high achievers a little bit more. Some of this has surfaced because of trying to meet the needs of the varying levels of learners in the classroom. So right now, I've got teachers at various levels of implementation. The ones that are in the beginning stages, we've been thinking through what kinds of centers do you want to include, how do you want to organize your students, do you want them in groups or free choice, how are you going to communicate the rotations to the students, how are you going to organize your materials. So we've been thinking through that piece of it. Other teachers are in the middle of implementing the centers, so they have a system going where they have time to either work with small groups or one-on-one with the students depending on their specific needs, while the rest of the students are engaged in either independent work or doing some collaborative things. So while we've been doing this, we've been tying a lot of our work into the gradual release framework, and we've been working on creating purpose statements and designing some of that guided practice time and thinking through the collaborative learning piece. So we're really excited about what we've been doing, and we've been excited about what we've done. We're excited about where this could be going, but most of all, we're just really excited to see the possible student impact that it could have. So that's just one of the things that I've been working with some of the teachers on this year. So.
I'm Nikki Anslinger, and I'm also a secondary coach. And I just tried to brainstorm some things that I've been working on. I tried to pick out a couple that I just wanted you to know. And I asked teachers if I could share this, and they said, please share and tell our names too. We're so excited about the work that we're doing. But over the last 2 years, I've worked with the reading. I guess we named ourselves the Reading Interventionist Team. And we've looked at our data, and last year we started attending different trainings on comprehension strategies, phonetic strategies. And at that point, we looked at the students that we were identifying, and we weren't completely happy with that we were reaching every student that we needed to. So we began looking at our math scores, our ITED scores, and then we wanted to dig further. So we actually took a team of teachers and went to the previous grade level and assessed each student, and realized that we were kind of doing a one-stop shop where we were giving reading instruction and not digging further to see what exactly was the reading deficit. So this year, we implemented extra programs within that. We looked at if the student needed a phonetic instruction, if the student needed comprehension, and then we split them up into small groups. Throughout the year, we have been meeting, brainstorming, looking at that data to see how we're doing. And just recently, we've given our end of semester assessment pieces, and this is really cool when you hear this. So not everybody is done, but the one group that is in right now, of the 12 students that she's working with, 73% of those students have shown growth. And the average growth that they have shown is over 2.25 years of growth. So that's really exciting. So she was like, yes, tell me results. So that has been really fun. And so we'll continue to work on that in years to come as well. Teachers also have come to me and asked for help as far as behavior issues, as far as mental health issues with the students that we're having. And we have a couple different things going on. At the high school, we've done some training. We went out and we actually went to the prison. And we went to a class called the Domino Effect. And we looked at what the prisoners there told us that they were lacking. What could have maybe changed their direction or their path in life. So we brought that information back here. And of the 4 teachers that went, we've been giving up our lunches a couple times a week and looking at how can we get this information back to other teachers? What can we do to impact others? Because we came back knowing we had to make a difference. We were very passionate about, we have one shot during this time to change somebody's lives. So the really cool thing is through our work, these teachers planned our PD for Friday. So they met during lunch, they took control of it, they reached out to different people to bring them in, and that was pretty exciting to see teachers do that. The other thing at the middle school level that we just had today, which was very exciting, is there were a couple of us just kind of brainstorming on things that we wanted to do to change the climate, to change the culture with students at the middle school, and we started talking about the movie Wonder. So then we met after school, we emailed back and forth, we created a Google Doc, kept talking, and it just kind of branched out into the community. So between all of us, we were able to talk to different community members and take those students to the movie Wonder today. Both of those groups are going to try to work together, and they are going to try to, we have one that we're starting to work with this week, and another one where we're sending invites at the high school to start an advisory council where we want to get kids involved so that they have a say of what are some things that can impact their lives, what are some things that we can do here to branch out to make a difference. So those are just a couple of things that have been involved.
I'm Marilyn Thornburg, elementary literacy instructional coach. A big part of our work as instructional coaches is really being that thinking partner with our colleagues. And that can lead to a lot of collaborations, which you've heard several of those. For example, last spring for elementary, 3 of our grade levels worked on alignment of a piece of their curriculum, and that stemmed from just being a thinking partner with one of the grade level leaders. And so we got the other grade level leaders involved, and they helped facilitate that work. So a piece of their curriculum aligned that last spring. Sometimes it's program implementation. How do we effectively implement this program? But even in doing that, it leads to other things. And a lot of times it leads to student engagement. How do we make sure that all students are engaged in this learning? Another example might be the literacy block. They have 90 minutes literacy block every day. And how are we using that time? So some teachers wanted to really investigate, how am I using this time and how could I more effectively use that time for this group of students? So every day I get to be part of some amazing reflective conversations, and they're all focused on student learning. One of our coaches, Brittany Roberts, couldn't be here tonight, so I have a message to share some experiences that she's had. She's one of our secondary instructional coaches. It says, one thing I've been spending a lot of time on this year is co-planning lessons and instruction based on teachers' goals for their students. For example, one of the middle school ELA teachers is working on a research project and was concerned about fake news and students not questioning the credibility of sources. So we've been working on a 2 to 3 day lesson plan that engages students in that process and gives them skills to determine credibility and bias, not just for the project, but also to increase their own media literacy. We're going to have the students try this first to get some formative data and then use a gradual release model to hone their skills based on what we find. We're teaching it together this week and are excited to see how students' skills increase. I'm also excited to be present to see student discussions and reactions so we can further modify the lesson to best fit their needs. We're going to build it all in Canvas as well, so it can be exported if other teachers want to use it this year. Another example is a high school teacher and I also worked on modifying a mini unit last month on budgeting in consumer econ. A lesson framework was already in place, and we modified it to make the topic even more applicable to the students' future lives. We use their potential future careers to determine future salary using the Navigator program. Students then went through the process of determining taxes, expenses, insurance, etc., and creating a budget based on that salary. Students also received different budget scenarios where they had to account for sudden expenses that could come up. I was able to co-teach several times, and since it was a new lesson, we used student work and feedback to help guide us each day. We are now analyzing their project to see what strengths and weaknesses are in their work and to guide us further this year and next semester. Thank you. Any questions for the team or Katie?
Katie, are there guidelines that you have to follow in the implementation of this? And how autonomous are you within our system to do what you think is important?
Sure.
To address that.
So there's originally, probably going on 5 years now, there was an original plan that was written. And in that plan, there had to be monetary pieces, there had to be professional development for whatever that leadership looked like, the roles and responsibilities that you have for instructional coaches, but all roles such as mentors fall into this area, data team leaders, building team leaders, they're all paid out of this funding. And so we have to have those roles and responsibilities spelled out. And then we also have to evaluate. Not only do we have to evaluate our plan for impact and register that with the Department of Education, but we also have to have a peer review. So another district and our district have to talk about our plans, what's going well, what feedback do we have for each other. So we do have some stringent guidelines about what we can do with those funds. Currently, we get about $322 per student. It's a student formula for that. But that is, again, and we have to have 25% of our staff in leadership roles. Well, I have 6 instructional coaches, but again, my mentors fall into that area, my building team, leadership team, which I think there's 20-some, and then my PLC team leaders are also in there. So we're right around 35% of our staff are somehow impacted by leadership roles. The TLC committee is also included in that as having leadership roles. So it does impact us broadly, and that was the point, was that we have more options for people to grow and learn to be professional.
You might mention, Dave, you were talking about assessment of the program, and that's what we entered into last year with Sinclair Research Group.
Right. So a year ago at this time, we reached out to someone that a lot of districts in Southeast Iowa had worked with. Her name is Lois Abel, and she's with the Sinclair Group, and engaged in some surveys around a lot of different leadership topics that really helped us home in and make some adaptations and adjustments. For example, last year and previous to that, our instructional coaches were up in front of staff delivering a lot of professional development. And that's a lot of work. To do something at a very high level, the prep time, for every hour that you present, you should have a minimum of 2 hours of preparation behind it. That's a pretty big process. It was noted both from our staff and our coaches from a lot of different sources in these surveys. Is that the best use of our coaches? Or is it more of the side-by-side partnership pieces? So because of that, we've reduced the amount of professional development time that they're doing. And as you can hear, they're doing some amazing things. We really have, as a leadership team of teachers, just the cream of the crop across the state. They really, great partnership, great reflection. But this data is so important to guide us in our work, and we'll be engaging in that again this year. So we have 2 years worth of data to again, make some good decisions.
I was telling John a little while ago that the kids went, you had the kids go to, I think 6th, 7th, and 8th graders went to the movie today, and it was interesting because I took my son to school this morning, and he didn't say, oh, we're going to a movie. He said, we're going to a movie, but the reason why we're going is to address bullying, and which surprised me. I would think you just have to go to a movie today, but I think the message must have been carried very well, because that was what he got to take out of watching the movie, to address the bullying. And then he talked about that a little bit on the way to school. So I think you guys did a really good job of making sure that they understood the point of that. And I think it's important that they got to see that. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I know it's something that's an issue that's trying to get addressed pretty heavy here. So I appreciate that very much. So.
And And that's just another valid point. I know the administrative principals, myself, Mr. Hanover said, when you're looking at a staff of 170, to do the direct side-by-side impact work that instructional coaches are doing is next to impossible. There's 160 teachers, and there's just too few of us to be able to sit down and do all of that work. Classroom instruction is heavy duty, and there's a lot of decisions, a lot of prep work, a lot of time, and we just keep throwing more at them. So to offer the resource of having really talented educators sit next to me and help me think about my data, to help me think about my instruction, to do a little bit of the legwork about the research. When we read Mrs. Roberts' statement, she was talking about the fact that they got the kids into a budgeting app. That's their life, that's their framework. She did the research for that because we know that classroom teachers are already doing all of these other things. But to have someone else sit down and do that with me, it makes it a lot more doable, and I can apply it right now with someone sitting there. So it's a good thing.
Willie, I'm glad you mentioned the movie. I was going to, listening to John, his program at noon, I believe he said the cost was around $2,200, which I think was funded by citizens. And so I can remember a few he mentioned, but for fear of leaving out somebody, just thank you to them to making that possible.
Yeah, it's a great effort by our community, and I mentioned a couple on the radio, Dave. So Noon Rotary contributed, Innovair and Candace Becker at Innovair, and the workers at Innovair all contributed to the kids going, and whatever difference there is that the school district is going to, and Main Street Cinema, their time and effort and a reduced rate. So thank you to all of them.
And Willie, if you want to see it, I think tonight's the last showing at 7. So we'll try to speed this up and get you out here by 7:20.
Yeah. Thank you to our coaches for everything you do. Thank you very much. It's a great job.
Anything further on this matter, board? Not, we'll move on to item B, administrative services. John, your report, please.
Okay, just a few things. A couple of you were able to attend our School Improvement Advisory Committee meeting 2 weeks ago now, and this is just some of the notes. That's just FYI for right now. But we talked about district facilities and district technology. Had a lot of conversation about those two things, and then finally asked the question: well, what recommendations might you have for the board as it is related to district facilities? Talked a lot about security and improving security at all of our buildings. There was a lot of talk about traffic flow and traffic flow concerns. We talked some about is it time to have discussion about a single elementary building that may take care of many issues. Maybe even bigger than that, develop a long-term and short-term strategic site plan. Someone mentioned at one point the high school was was to be the central hub and was the main part of a long-term plans that kind of dovetail together. Lighting evaluations at all the buildings, increase small space availability. That's really a small space where you can work one-on-one with a kid or a small group of kids is really prime real estate, and there's just not much of that to go around. And again, kind of discussion about a site plan. Related to technology, the recommendations were make sure we're considering the life cycle of all devices, not just our laptops, but all of our devices. We should be comparing the cost of a Mac computer to other devices. Are they going to last 7 years? We need a plan for smartboard replacements. Explore expanding Wi-Fi so there's more access, perhaps even buses. This was mentioned several times. We need a website update, which I would agree with that too. And then finally take some time to teach parents about expectations for use, especially as it's related to the one-to-one. You know, should we have a parenting class for one-to-one schools? some of our notes from the SIAC meeting. The next thing I had, we got this from the School Board Association. We have talked a lot about this as a board. The state penny sales tax for school infrastructure. This came just, I don't know, a week ago or so. The door may be opening to extend the state penny sales tax. That will be a heavy topic during the legislative session when they convene in January. The yellow highlights are mine. After months of concerted effort to garner legislative support, there are signs that the door is opening to extend the state penny sales tax for school infrastructure in the 2018 legislative session. That sales tax ends currently, it sunsets in 2029. So that's coming up. Mentions here it sunsets in 2029. It would create an abrupt end to millions of dollars of school funding for safe and modern buildings and other school infrastructure such as tech, and it would shift the entire burden of property taxes. Just a few of the notes there. If you see your legislator, Representative Heaton, or Senator Rich Taylor, remind them that this would be a good time to extend the state penny sales tax for school infrastructure. And then finally, in my report, one of the things that we've been talking about as a finance committee and how to address some of our budget needs for next year. Our enrollment, due to a decrease in our enrollment, we'll need to look at some reductions again this year. So we've talked about early retirement incentive, running an early retirement incentive again. These are just a few of the parts of the conversation that we have. There's nothing, definite yet, but it would be a one-year offer this year. You need to be 55 years of age and have 15 years of service to the district. If you apply those standards, we have 21 teachers who would be eligible and meet that. We have 2 directors who would be eligible, 1 principal, and then 15 non-certified staff who would be eligible. We've talked about several different options. We've talked about a lump sum amount. That's what we did last year for the two groups. We just did a lump sum amount. Or we did an amount that would go towards health insurance premium until Medicare age. We also talked this year, we've talked about a percentage of your final salary rather than just a lump sum. Perhaps 40% of your final salary or 45% of your final salary. We looked at some figures on both of those, and then perhaps as one of the options, 90% of the insurance premium allocation that the employee currently gets. That's some of the discussion that we have had. A survey was sent out to eligible employees to gauge interest, and that's to be returned by December 20th. And just as a reminder, the early retirement incentive is funded from the management fund, which is a property tax fund, but it is funded by the management fund. What we're trying to do is reduce expenditures and expenses in our general fund. So early retirement is from the management fund. If you just made some assumptions on those who might take, if you looked at your list of 21 teachers and directors, principals, non-certified staff, and tried to make some assumptions on those who would take maybe a cash payout or insurance, if everybody took again, based on those assumptions, if everybody took the early retirement, the levy to fund like 40% of your final salary, and those who would take insurance would be 48 cents to the management fund on every $1,000 worth of valuation, 48 cents for the first 2 years, and then 24 cents afterwards, because you have people getting older and coming off and hitting that Medicare age, and then this 45% insurance there. So just preliminary, we'll talk again as a finance committee in January, and then I hope to have a recommendation for you at the January meeting. Okay, that's the superintendent's report.
Okay, we have board committee reports. You have a handout that discusses what each of the committees talked about at their committee meetings. Any member of any of the committees wish to make any further comments about your committee meeting? John, do you have any comments you want?
The only things that I would comment on, Dave, was December 1st, our policy committee notes, and that's when the policy committee Dr. Roselle met with us, and I just put some of his comments or thoughts, and committee members, if I don't have it right, please speak up, but these are the few of the things that I heard Dr. Roselle say, that we have very few current offenders with children or grandchildren attending our school district, and I mentioned what those numbers were earlier. And he also said what Ronnie and his co-workers have said, that the crime of every offender is different, and the district should have a policy that gives the flexibility to consider those differences. In Dr. Roselle's experience and professional opinion, they allow him to say that the likelihood of a person currently on the registry committing a violation at a public event is almost nil. He commented that these crimes are almost always committed by someone who knows the child well and when they're alone with the child. If the district adopts policy with no flexibility to consider individual offenders, it potentially punishes the child or the grandchild of the offender, who will never have the opportunity to have their parent or grandparent see them in a school event. The district, as Martha mentioned, the district always has the right to deny access at any time and for any reason. Someone on the registry might be allowed to attend one event, as Martha mentioned, but not another. They would need permission each time. And as a resident and father of students in our district, Dr. Roselle would be willing to help assess permission requests. Anything else?
I found that very reassuring. It wasn't exactly the way it struck me the first time it was brought up.
Moving on to item 7, other board communications. Does the board have any communications they wish to bring forth? The only thing I would indicate, I think probably all of you received an email from Lois Roth, who teaches in the Danville district, about the Danville joining our football program.
Yeah, and that email, a copy of that is in your packets. Yep.
We'll move on to item 8, consent items, personnel, open enrollment. I don't see any open enrollments. Yes, there are. And, there are 2 personnel items, 1 selection, 1 resignation. I think we can handle this with one motion unless you want to act on them separately.
Make a motion to approve personnel and open enrollment.
Second.
Any comments by the board? Ed?
Sandersville?
Yes.
Wiley?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Amos?
Yes.
Ruth?
Yay.
Ron?
Yeah.
Item 9 is unfinished business, and there is none. Item 10 is new business. Under A is consideration of the 2018-19 cooperative agreement for football with Danville Community School District. We need to act on this.
I would just remind the board, this is, we've had a lot of discussion. It is a year-to-year agreement. It doesn't have to be long-term, and my recommendation is that you.
Any further discussion or comments from the board? If not, then could I have a motion to approve the sharing agreement with Danville for the football program? I think we need to vote on a positive motion as opposed to a negative motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, Ed?
Anderson? Yes. Wiley?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Amos?
Yes.
Lloyd?
Yay.
Ron?
No.
Welcome, Danville. Item B is second reading of Board Policy Series 400, staff personnel with recommendations to post notice of intended action.
The only recommendation that I have after reviewing the School Board Association, any recommendations they have and reading through Policy Series 400 is just the change of an address. In Policy 401.2, we want to update that address to our current address, and that's the only recommended change.
Then can I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Ed?
Sandersville? Yes. Wiley?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Amos?
Yes.
Lloyd?
Yay.
Ron?
Yeah.
Item C is first reading of recommendation to post notice of intended action on the Board Policy 903.7, restrictions regarding persons required to register on the sex offender register.
So, as Martha mentioned, I wanted to point out to the board the Iowa Code and the language in the code regarding exclusion zones and prohibitions of certain employment-related activities. A sex offender who has been convicted of a sex offense against a minor or a person required to register as a sex offender in another jurisdiction for an offense involving a minor shall not do any of the following. And letter A is be present upon the real property of a public or non-public elementary or secondary school without the written permission of the school administrator or school administrator's designee unless enrolled as a student at the school. That language and being present on the real property without written permission is the language in the policy that I'm recommending to you, 903.7. You can see here in letter A, you shall not do any of the following: be present upon the real property of Mount Pleasant Community School District without the written permission of the school administrator or superintendent in advance. I think I'll just read through these if I could. Loiter within 300 feet of the boundary of a Mount Pleasant elementary or secondary school or child care facility. Letter C, be present on or in any vehicle owned, leased, or contracted by a Mount Pleasant elementary or secondary school without the written permission of the school administrator or superintendent when the vehicle is in use to transport students to or from a school or school-related activities. A sex offender who has been convicted of a sex offense against a minor who is the parent or legal guardian of a Mount Pleasant student shall not be in violation of this policy solely during the period of time reasonably necessary to transport the offender's own student to or from a Mount Pleasant facility. A sex offender who has been convicted of a sex offense against a minor who is legally entitled to vote shall not be in violation of this policy solely for a period of time reasonably necessary to exercise the right to vote in a public election if the polling location of the offender is located in a Mount Pleasant facility. A sex offender who has been convicted of a sex offense against a minor shall not operate, manage, or be employed by or act as a contractor or volunteer in a Mount Pleasant elementary or secondary school or child care facility. This policy shall not apply to resident students of school age. Go ahead.
If everything addressed the sex offense against a minor, what about a sex offender that has an offense against an adult? Are they allowed?
This would apply to anybody on the registry. Any person is required to register on the sex offender sex offense against a minor or any person required to register as a sex offender.
He's looking at the paragraphs below, where it specifically talks just about the minor, not about the registry. The ones at the bottom of the page. I was kind of wondering that too.
Well, that's I think, a valid point, but of course, since this is kind of the discretionary end of the policy, that person that Carl's referring to would certainly get permission from us in those circumstances. It's tough to draw a policy that covers every eventuality.
So if they're on the sex offender list, it's not just because of a minor or adult. They're registered for either or.
Yeah.
So if this was a policy, we'd have to, like the first paragraph where it says a sex offender has been convicted of a sex offense, you just strike out against a minor. Correct? So we could amend that in our motion. So it'd say a sex offender who has been convicted of a sex offense, who is the parent or legal guardian of non-resident student, shall not be. All we'd have to do is strike out against a minor. And we can put that in the motion.
And there might be someone on that registry who has committed a crime against an adult that our people who are knowledgeable of that person's circumstances would not recommend that they come to school. You know, it's possible.
So you would prefer language that just identifies, it would just say someone who's on the registry?
Yeah, as Chuck said, it would be, we'd have to do it the first paragraph, and then at the bottom of the page, there's 3 paragraphs that have the same. Though I would agree that a crime against a minor is the one that we're most concerned about.
I think it's all.
All of
Yeah.
Well, John's indicating maybe we should take it back to the attorney if we want to table it. Kind of seems to me the board is in favor of eliminating the minor provision, and we can pass it, or if that's what the board wishes, and then John can bounce it off the attorney, and if the attorney has a serious problem, excuse me, what we did, we can visit it later.
Two readings. Well, I'll just make a motion.
And it takes 2 readings, as John said.
So I'll make a motion with restrictions regarding the persons required to register without district discretion, with the amendment to the page, we remove against a minor. I mean, without discretion, it wouldn't matter whether it was a minor.
Clarification, Chuck, are you basically accepting this document but eliminating the words where they appear against a minor? Is that what you're doing?
Well, I think it should be without.
That's what you have marked on your paper.
Right. Let me think of how to word this.
I mean, this policy, why I asked that question is because you said without discretion, but this does give the administration discretion throughout.
You're going to have both of them here.
Did you have one of these without discretion and with discretion?
The only difference between those two was the language in letter A, the language without the written permission of the school administrator or superintendent in advance, that was out, it was gone. So
Okay, well, let's just start from scratch. Strike the motion.
I only have the one discretion, I don't have a second.
Yes, I didn't, we had looked at that several times. I didn't do one without discretion. I thought if you wanted to amend it, and if you didn't want any discretion, we'd just drop that language in letter A. But I'll be glad to take it back to our attorney and say, if we wanted to cover anybody who's on the registry, I think that's what we're getting at, not just an offense against a minor.
Correct.
I think so.
But I think there's still a question of whether we're doing discretion or not discretion.
Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah.
So the policy you have before you, as it reads, is a discretion, grants a discretion to the school to decide on a case-by-case, individual basis.
And that discretion comes from line A, right?
Under A, yes. And I believe that's what John is recommending that be passed. So we can pass this motion as it reads. 1, we can amend the motion by eliminating the words against a minor, I think in 4 places. Or we can table it and send it back to our attorney with that language eliminated to see if that passes muster. My suggestion would be to pass the motion eliminating those 2 words and bounce it off the attorney. And if it needs further tweaking, we can do it because this is only the first reading and we have to post it the second time. So I'll let somebody make a motion.
So moved.
And your motion is?
As you had recommended, David, to pass this with the amended language such that we're taking out a limitation of against a minor, it's 3 words.
All right.
But you're leaving paragraph A.
But leaving, I would say leaving paragraph A in, and that's my motion.
All right, so there's a motion. Is there a second? I will second as board president. Any further discussion? Ed, roll call.
Sandersville.
Yes.
Wiley.
Yes.
Andrew.
No.
Amos.
Yes.
Hoy.
Yay.
Ron.
No.
Motion passes. Moving on to item D, School Budget Review Committee, request for modified allowable growth for at-risk programming.
Yep, you can receive some, you have it in your packet here, I just turned this thing upside down. Anyway, $3,100 that we can receive in modified allowable growth for at-risk programming that we currently do. Again, we may or may not, want to get the cash for that when we set our budget in April, but we certainly want to get the modified allowable growth. Even though it's a small amount, I would recommend that you approve.
Any further questions by the board? Comments? Not? Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Ed?
Sandersville.
Yes.
Wiley.
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
Amos. Yes. Hoy.
Yay.
Ron.
Yeah.
Item E is consideration of construction management services for elementary air conditioning, Phase 2.
Okay, so in your packet there you have, we redid our request for a proposal, sent it back out. We got those back last Wednesday and Thursday, and you can see the not to exceed amounts there. Woodruff, Ball Team, Estes, Nelson, and Russell Construction. Felt like we had a good conversation with Woodruff Construction last week. Followed up on some reference checks. It came back very positive. I would recommend, and I think it's a recommendation of the site committee, to go with Woodruff Construction for our construction management services for not to exceed amount of, I think it was 136,900, 700, yeah, 900.
Any site committees have any comments they want to make?
After their interview, I thought
The Johnson's
they were decent, yeah, they were good.
I would say my department has an estimate made for school meeting projects. Everybody looked at.
Then could I have a motion to approve the hiring of Woodruff Construction, Tiffin, Iowa, to be our construction manager for the phase 2 of the elementary air conditioning?
So moved.
Second.
Mandersfeld, I think, got his name in first. Ed?
Anderson.
Yes.
Riley.
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
Amos.
Yes.
Coy.
Yay. Item F is consideration of overnight trip request to the High School of Culinary Arts, February 27 to Des Moines for Pro Start competition.
I would recommend that you approve.
Thurman?
Motion to approve that.
Second.
Andrew was in first. Ed?
Anderson.
Yes.
Wiley.
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
Amos.
Yes.
Coy.
Yay.
Ron.
Before we adjourn, do we have a couple of students here tonight? Could you please stand, introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what your plans are?
Tanner Ruby. I just came for the government project. Need to come to a meeting.
And what are your plans after school, Tanner?
Maybe go to UNI to study. I don't know what yet, or depending on how the soccer season goes, I may go somewhere that has a soccer program.
Thank you. Next?
I'm James Lundell, and I'm also here for the government project. And my plans after high school are to go to college. I don't know where yet, and I don't know what I'm going to study, but I'm going.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
I'm Phoenix Fagliano, and I plan to go to Arizona and go to ASU to be an orthodontist.
Thank you.
I'm Brittany Scott. I'm also a senior. I plan to go to Indian Hills to study criminal justice.
Thank you. We are adjourned.
Just a reminder, no work session in the Senate. Yeah. Sorry.
We're not going to meet on another Monday
Sorry,
night.
disappoint you.
We do have a policy.
I know.